Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We're in our ninth installment of the Coaches Forum here with FungoMan, and we are so excited today. We got a great baseball guy, man who's been in baseball a long, long time, done a lot of things, and I have the privilege of knowing him for over 35 years.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Welcome, Charles Scott from the Bay Area up in California. We are so excited to have you and welcome.
Oh, well, I'm happy to be here, guys. Thanks for having me.
We so Charles and I go way back to college, and we were teammates at Arizona State, and we I think I was a junior as you were a freshman, and
Yeah.
so we played 2 years together. And then Charles was there 1 or 2 more years, and really did the deal. He was good. He was really good while I was there, and then he became great when I left. And so it was really cool to watch his career. And we want to kind of talk a little bit about that. We went to the College World Series together for 2 years, and just looking back at college, what are your memories of that? And you got some favorite times that you had back then?
Well, yeah, obviously, the college experience was amazing. I mean, playing at Arizona State, the #1 baseball school in the country at the time, getting an opportunity to play with some of the best amateur players in the country, Barry Bonds, Oda B. McDowell, Louis Medina, Mike Devereaux, Todd Brown. I mean, the list goes on and on of the level of talent that we had at that school, competing in back-to-back College World Series and having just a plethora of guys that were drafted in high rounds coming off that team. The expectations were always so great. So it was a wonderful experience being able to, go to Arizona State and once again play with such high-level competition. And it catapulted me up into my pro career. It was an amazing experience.
Yeah, Charles was he was like like an eight sport athlete in high school, and could have played anything he wanted to. It was pretty incredible. I can remember you. I came in as a transfer, a junior transfer, and I'm looking at you in BP. I'm going, I mean, this guy is the best hitter I've ever seen. He's hitting balls 500 feet, and then you end up being a pitcher. I mean,
Yeah, well,
you
that's
know,
kind of what happens when you're kind of a jack of all trades and a master of none. You get to a point in life where you have to make a decision. And when I was originally drafted, they really didn't know what to make of me because, like you said, I was a very good hitter, I had a lot of power, and had great potential as a position player. But I also threw 97 miles an hour, and so after my first year of pro ball, doing a little bit of both, it was kind of getting confusing, and the success was not really coming on either end. So I made the decision to just become just be a pitcher solely, and that worked out for my benefit. Yeah, I ended up having a very strong next couple of years, and was promoted to the major league roster after my third season, and was a minor league all-star all the way up to that point. Unfortunately for me, I experienced some injuries that were a little bit debilitating with regard to my ability to do the things that I did naturally, and it definitely derailed my career. But I was the #1 prospect in the Cleveland Indians organization, and once again made it to the big leagues in 3 years, and was well on my way. But you can't really combat the injuries; you have to deal with them as they come along, and it's actually was a blessing in disguise because it catapulted me into a bunch of different a bunch of different things. I ended up going back to school and played college basketball, which was a great experience.
well, I didn't
Um,
even know that. Where did you play at?
yeah, I ended up going back to Dominican University, which is a local college here in Marin County where I live. Received a full scholarship as a 33-year-old after my playing baseball
No
career
way.
to, to go back and play college basketball. And it was a small school. It wasn't like some of the bigger schools that I was recruited to out of high school, UCLA and Oregon and those type of schools. But nevertheless, it was an opportunity for me to do something that I really wanted to do, and help further my academic career as well. So I did that, averaged 14 points and 12 rebounds per game over the
Oh,
course of the year. had a great season, was awarded the Scholar Athlete Award, which is something that I take a lot of pride into because prior to going back to school, the second time around as an adult, knowing that I have to make a living outside of sports, I wasn't going to be this $1 million baseball player that I had originally envisioned myself being. I really had to apply myself academically, and that was a blessing in disguise because throughout that process, I discovered that I was actually pretty smart, and
That's great.
did my own homework and did my own, you know, test and studying and everything else, and did quite well. And like I said, was awarded the Scholar Athlete Award. I had a 4.0 GPA my first semester and a 3.8 my second. So
Wow.
that was a real blessing in disguise, Romy, to be honest with you, because it really gave me the confidence to look to make a living in something outside of sports or outside of baseball, being a player, and really gave me the confidence to go ahead and do what it is I'm doing now.
Well, before we get to doing what you're doing now, you did go back into baseball and you became a pro scout for 9+ years. So
I did,
um,
yeah,
you
yeah.
took that education and started applying. I know you said it earlier. You saw a lot of good talent, and you knew talent yourself as a player. How did that translate into the scouting jobs?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously having a playing background and being a multi-sport athlete like I was, I definitely had an idea of what I thought an athlete was, based on playing with guys like yourself and Barry Bonds and some of the other great athletes that we played with and against Mark McGuire, Randy Johnson.
Mm,
We played against the best of the best playing at that school, playing in the back then what was known as the six pack, where we just played basically the two Southern Cal schools, the two Northern Cal schools, and then the two Arizona schools. But, there was a ton of talent and, we competed at a very high level. And so I knew what talent was. I knew what type of talent played at the big league level, having gone to that level myself. I knew what to look for. I knew what type of body structures worked. I knew what type of tools were necessary and needed. And I was a very successful scout. I was an area scout first for Tampa Bay during their inaugural, startup, and was an area scout. I covered Northern California here where I live. And from there, I was promoted. I got a promotion with the Arizona Diamondbacks where I became a West Coast supervisor. Was lucky enough in 2001 to win the World Series and was awarded a World Series ring, which was really cool.
very
And
cool.
then from then I went on to become a national cross checker, which with the Washington Nationals. We started out as the Montreal Expos, but then obviously switched into the Washington Nationals. So I went from being an area guy to a West Coast supervisor to a national cross checker, and I actually interviewed with the Pittsburgh Pirates for a scouting director's position, which they awarded me, offered me the position, but unfortunately, given my lifestyle and my family history here in Northern California and children and all that type of stuff, I declined the job and decided to basically venture off into the private sector where I am now and do my own thing with future prospects.
Right. Well, as a scout and a very successful one who saw the very best talent, is there anything that would surprise coaches about what scouts look for? Is there something that you might, I mean, what are those attributes that you look for in players that maybe people don't really look at?
Well, I think one of the things that is kind of a difficult thing sometimes for the collegiate coach, um, when they are, developing collegiate athletes, is that, a lot of the natural instinctual reaction of the game has been kind of taken away to a certain extent. Coaches are a lot more likely to be calling pitches from the dugout. They're a lot more likely to be positioning. I mean, it's kind of like Major League Baseball now with the analytics and everything, how they have the shift on in every play. I mean, a lot of what was considered to be natural instinctive reaction when I played has been kind of taken away from the athlete because now they have someone that's doing that for them. So the game has definitely evolved in that way. That's a lot different than what some of us old heads or old school guys like myself enjoy seeing. The games are obviously much longer because of the amount of back and forth that goes on. And, it's just, in my opinion, not as an enjoyable game to watch as it used to be. But nevertheless, it is a time of the signs, and that's kind of the way things are. And so we accept it and we move on with it. But I would say that my main pet peeve, or main, um, you know, thing that I noticed the most was just how much the game was controlled from a coaching aspect in nowadays games, both at the collegiate and professional levels. It's what I consider to be more micromanaged, and that's tough. That's tough to watch sometimes, and it's a little bit more difficult to evaluate talent, because you know that the player is not doing that naturally on his own, that it's being pretty much programmed into him or told what to do. So that's a little bit different. But tools are tools. Athleticism is athleticism. Body structure and size and strength is what that is. So, I mean, you can pretty much decipher those things. I think another thing that's really, really important with regard to being able to determine whether a kid has what it takes in order to be successful at the pro level is his overall makeup. I call it enjoying the process. And what I mean by that is, in order to be good at anything, Romy, to be good at anything, you have to enjoy doing it and put the time into it, and if you enjoy the process, if you enjoy the lifting, if you enjoy the film time, if you enjoy the stretching, if you enjoy the practice time on the field, if you enjoy all of those things and take pleasure in that, then it's easier to do those things more and more and more and more. And as you do them more and more and more, you develop a higher level of skill and become more comfortable with what it is that you're doing. So that's something that I look for in players, to see just how much engaged in the game and how much they really love the game, because that really tells me a lot about the adversity that we all know that they're going to have to endure moving into a pro system.
That's good. No, that's really good, Charles. I know, you translated yeah, you still look like you're 30. I mean, you stayed, and I saw you not too long ago. I'm going, dang, you
Yeah,
feel like you look like you're playing, and so it's hard to believe that we've been around for so long. But
right.
you've now had three solid careers. Well, if you count basketball, that's a fourth, I guess.
Yeah.
When you went into business on your own, what prompted that? You know, what was the motivation in doing that?
Well, honestly, for me, I'm a very self-driven person. I am very confident in my abilities. I was always as a player. I am as a business owner, and so I just wanted to invest in myself, Romy. Honestly, when I was offered the scouting director's position with the Pittsburgh Pirates, and came home and told my wife that they had offered me the job, and saw the reaction that I got, which was basically tears, and they were not tears of happiness; they were tears of, oh no, we have to move to Pittsburgh and you're going to still be gone 200 days a year.
Mm.
That was kind of the writing on the wall for me with regard to, my career as an executive. Um, I live here in Northern California, Marin County, and it's a beautiful area. It's where I was born and raised. It's a very desirable location, and I'm very well known here and very comfortable. And so, there are not a lot of other places that I really have a desire to live. And once again, in the business that I was in, where it was, evaluating talent, you have to go where the talent is. So you're always, always, always on the road.
Mm.
And, having children, I have three, 27, 25, and a 20-year-old. And at the time, obviously, they were much younger. And I wanted to be a father, and I wanted to be a husband, and I wanted to be home with my children, and I wanted to help develop my son into a player. And I wanted to, be there to help raise my girls and see their dance recitals and soccer games, and just wanted to have that freedom to do that and not be gone so often. So I made the transition into private coaching, where I was doing just private one-on-one lessons originally. And as I did that, I got good at it. Obviously, with my playing background and my scouting background, I was able to see things that a lot of other coaches aren't able to see, and able to make adjustments and make some real positive changes in some of my athletes and students, and I quickly grew a very positive reputation here in the area. And my business basically just took off from there. And so, it grew into camps and clinics, it grew into travel teams, it grew into strength and conditioning, it grew into, this hit tracks league now that I'm doing. It's really just continues to evolve. And, it seems to be working throughout the most adverse conditions, with this COVID-19 thing, and, people being restricted and being, a little bit more quarantined. I've been able to really create programming that's maintained a very profitable margin and really kept my business afloat. So I'm very fortunate and blessed.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's we're going to hear a little more about that in a minute. But you touched on a lot of different things in what you do with future prospects. But can you boil it down maybe to 3 words that describe a typical practice with your future prospects, guys?
Yeah. Well, my thing's a little bit different than most other travel ball organizations because we really pride ourselves on the instructional part of it. So, I tell kids and parents when they bring their kids to our facility to train that it's not going to be a comfortable transition because, basically training to become a better athlete is always should be an uncomfortable situation. Learning new things and being exposed and being taught and told to do things that you're not used to doing or comfortable with doing always put the individual in an uncomfortable environment. So training athletes and letting them know that it's natural and it's okay for them to be uncomfortable with the things that I'm telling them and showing them and asking them to do is first and foremost. Also, I'm not really into recreational type coaching. And what I mean by that is I want my athletes and my students to understand that, when we formulate these teams that we want to be competitive and that we take pride in whether we win or lose. It's not the only thing, but I think the way that we, go into our daily regimen of training and then into our game day type environment is a mindset that needs to be also taught and mentored and developed. And so, I don't refer to my organization like a lot of others as recreational. We are a strong competitive travel organization, and we take pride in teaching those things and going out and working toward them. It's once again, I want to reemphasize that it's not just about winning, but it is about how you play, and it is about how you react to the things that happen throughout the course of winning and losing that are really important to me, that I really want to keep festering and mentoring and teaching my student athletes. And then, just loving the process, enjoy the struggle of being an athlete. You had mentioned earlier that, that I still look like I can play. I'm 6'5", 235 pounds, and I've been built like this pretty much my whole life because I really do take a lot of pride in the way I present myself and the way I look. And when I'm training student athletes, I want them to come to the facility and not only just see someone that's fit and that has the background, but someone who is still capable of physically showing them the things that I'm trying to teach them. That's something that is really important to me. I want the respect of the athlete so that he will gain more trust in what it is I'm asking him to do. And not only that I'm just asking him to do it, but that I myself can still do those things too, even at 56 years of age. So that's one of the reasons why you really do still see me very fit, because I do take pride in that stuff, and I do want to make sure that my student athletes witness that when they come to future prospects and first meet me.
That's really great. The communication of what you're saying, it's almost like you don't really have to say as much because you are showing it. I mean, you have
Sure.
to demonstrate it, and I think that's fantastic.
Well, Ronnie, like we say in our sport, especially with athletes who have egos to begin with, talk is cheap, man. I mean, there are a lot of people that sell you a lot of wolf tickets and tell you a lot of things that are great, and you find out that they're not actually what you thought they were. For me, once again, the proof is always in the pudding. This is how I make my living. I do not have another source of income. So reputation and quality of what I do is extremely, extremely important. And so I take it very seriously. And I think that that's been one of the main keys to my 22 years of success. I've been doing this in the private sector for 22 years now. I've been around doing this business in a business where it's very difficult to establish a successful track record. I've been doing this for 22 years and I've been very, very successful at it. So I think a lot of the things that I'm describing to you are the reasons why I've been able to maintain such a successful business for such a long time.
Well, interestingly enough, 22 years, we got reacquainted through what we do, and it has to do with technology and doing things a little different. But you started 22 years ago, and I know for a fact that you went into it with a lot less of the, you talked about the Hit Tracks League and some of the things you're doing now. How has that changed? And can you describe some of those early systems that you used in comparison to today?
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the key elements to being successful in business and continuing to be successful in business is the ability to keep up with the times. I mean, you have to make adjustments, and you have to be creative, and you have to be inventive. You have to keep your clients and your students wanting to come back because they know that they're still going to be challenged regardless of how long they've been training at that location. So for me, having tools like the FungoMan and tools like a Hit Tracks machine and tools like some of the strength and conditioning things that we do with the TRXs and the crossover bands, and it's just a plethora of different equipment that I have at my location that really make it easy for myself and some of the guys that train there to really have a very, very wide angle of different tools that they can use to do the same thing for the most part. I mean, it's bottom line is you're really doing the same thing with a lot of these tools, but it's just a different way of doing it. There's so many different ways of teaching, and coaches can be telling a kid to do it one way and another coach another way, and they're telling you to do the same exact thing, but one guy's speaking Spanish and the other one's speaking Chinese. I mean, that's the bottom line. So having the ability to communicate what it is that you want and how you want it is really important. And these are just some of the tools that I use to kind of keep the athletes, engaged.
Well, you proved that during COVID this year, and when we talked, I guess it was a couple of months ago, maybe 3 months ago now.
Yeah.
It might have been even earlier. You described something that you were doing, and it was different. You have our machine, and our machine is really one of the things it can do is fielding, and that's kind of the flagship part of it. But it also is a pitching machine, and you coupled that with the Hit Tracks to do something pretty innovative. And I want you to share that, if you would, as much as you want to, how that worked and what made it work, and what made your kids really want to do it, and did it help?
Yeah. Well, with this COVID thing and parents being a little bit, sensitive to who their children were going to be around and what environment they were going to be in, and people not really knowing, how this virus spreads, it was really important for me to understand that and be able to come up with a game plan that would put parents' minds at ease and let them know that their kids would be exposed as little as possible to something that is deemed to be very dangerous. So the social distancing thing was really important. Wearing masks was another really important element, and even take it a step further, I required all my students to wear baseball gloves as well. So as soon as they enter the facility, they were required to have a mask on. They were required to have gloves on, and we took their temperatures immediately upon entering the facility to make sure that there were no high fevers. We were able to create an indoor hitting league utilizing the Hit Tracks batting simulator, which basically is a machine that picks up the speed of the ball, and it gives you a magnitude of different variables with regard to, you know, exit speed, launch angle, direction of ball flight, single, double, triple. It measures balls and strikes based on the individual's height in the cage. So it was very, very accurate with regard to judging balls and strikes. And there's an 80-inch screen TV in there, and so the student, when they take their swings, can actually see the flight of the ball, see the result of the pitch and the at bat. And there are fielders that are on the machine as well that field the ball. So if you hit into a double play, the machine will turn a double play, and the student will see it on the screen. If he hits a double in the gap, you'll see the ball go to the wall, and the outfielders go to the ball and hit the cutoff man and relay it to, and the runner sliding in the second. So it's a visual learning tool that the kids really enjoy, because, you know, so many of these kids are into video games anyway, and it really gives you that video effect. Where the FungoMan really made it unique was, you know, with the social distancing and, you know, really trying to, you know, keep as few hands off of the balls as possible and make sure that you know, we're doing our best to keep these kids safe. Is that I was able to have the FungoMan in the machine in the cage, delivering balls and strikes, because I'm working it remotely from a distance, you know, a social distance way, where I'm sitting at one end of the bench. The students are on one side of the cage, about 4 or 5. There are 4 or 5 on the other side of the cage, and I can literally throw a pitch using the remote. And I can throw a multitude of different pitches. I could throw, you know, fastball inside. I can throw a fastball. I mean, I can literally do my best to try and strike the hitter out, because I also have the ability to throw breaking balls, and the hitter doesn't know it's coming. So it really does help to simulate a real live at bat, and I can adjust the speeds and throw changeups and all that type of stuff. So I really use the FungoMan to its fullest capabilities, because it really gave me a lot of versatility to keep the hitters guessing and keep it really, really exciting for the player. The scores were very competitive, because you don't have just a certain team coming in and hitting against, say, an Iron Mike machine, where it's just throwing one pitch, and you don't really have the ability to adjust the different locations or the pitch speed and things of that nature. So it really gave me a lot of versatility that the hitters and the students and the kids really liked, and that it helped me to maintain the social distance as well. So it was a godsend. Yeah, it was awesome.
So how long did you do the program? Was it how long was it?
Well, I've run 2 programs now. The first program I had about 80 kids sign up for it, and we had I think 18 teams. We're divided into 18 teams. We had multiple levels. I had a 9 to 11U level. I had a 13, 14U level, and then I had a 15 to 17U level. And so the calibration of the speeds was set more appropriately for each age limit, and they came in individually at different times throughout the week. We had a schedule of a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So each team played a total of 2 games per week over a 5-week period, and then the last week number 6, was playoff week. So we ranked the teams based on how they performed up to that point, put them into their categories, you know, from 1 to 18, and then they came in and they competed. You know, the last place team competed against the first place team, and vice versa, and kind of arranged the whole playoff system that way until we finally came down to a champion in each age limit.
So you literally created a competitive league when everybody else honestly was forced to stay at home, and if they did do something, they were
guys, there were no fields available at this point in time, because, you know, all of the local counties and recreational government had basically locked down all the fields, so you couldn't be out on fields. And I was fortunate enough to have my own indoor training facility, so I was not affected in that sense. And I was pretty much the only dog and pony show in town. You know, if you wanted to play any type of competitive baseball, travel tournaments had all been shut down here in Northern Cal, and they still are. And so, you know, there was nothing else available to the kids. And at this point too, I want to make a point of is that, you know, this COVID thing had been already going for about 2.5, 3 months. People were really already on the edges of their seats, really wanting to get back into something. Their kids had already been pulled out of school. You know, they weren't able to have any type of social engagement with other, you know, friends and teams and players. So this was really a nice little surprise that I was able to create. And once again, it was totally safe because, you know, only 2 teams came in at one time, and there are only 3 to 5 players on each team. So one team would come in with their 3 or 5 players, and they would be on one side of the cage, and they would be 6 feet apart from one another. On the other side of the cage was team number 2 with 3 to 5 players, and they would be socially distanced away from each other, while still wearing the mask and the batting gloves and all that. And I would be social distance as well, working the FungoMan through the remote. And so it was about as little contact that you could have in an environment where you're still able to go out and have fun and still be able to compete against, you know, other players. So it was a very, very big success.
Wow. Congratulations on that. You know, you know, that is right there is, you know, many times we've talked, I've heard this said that, you know, during difficult times that's where the things that are born for the next generation happen during those times of struggle or you know, world war or in our case pandemic. Congratulations, that's really a really cool discovery. And you know, it's just you're helping the kids. I'm guessing you were successful with the safety. It sounds like it went through the whole way, right?
Yeah, we actually had completed that season. We've actually had a second season, and we were about to start our third season, Romy, and we've had 0 issues with regard to any of the kids with any type of COVID or any of that type of stuff. We've not had one incident. So yeah, we've been very blessed and fortunate, and knock on wood, and hopefully that continues. But yeah, over, you know, pretty much. I guess the first season was 6 weeks. The second season was 5, and then we're about to start our third. It's been 4 months, and we've had 0 issues with regard to the COVID.
Awesome. So let's change gears a little bit. You know, when you're as an instructor, and you said that's a big deal in your academy, in your future prospects, and you're competing, you're still playing games and you're taking them out and you guys are going out. What would you say is your proudest coaching moment? Do you have a story that maybe of a player or team?
Oh, wow. I have lots of stories about that. I mean, I will tell you, just recently, you know, a lot of my students come to me and they have certain deficiencies or what. I mean, all of these players are developing, and I'd also like to make it known that, you know, at my facility we train magnitude of different age levels and skill sets. I mean, I've had, you know, 6-year-olds training at my facility, and then I've had Barry Bonds and Alex Rodriguez training at my facility. So, you know, we really work with a lot of different skill sets and talent levels, and so, you know,
Charles,
you're
I have
always
tell you,
having to.
Charles, that's about as wide a spectrum as you can. I
Yeah,
think
it
you
is
got
very
both
wild.
sides.
Yeah. But you know, but Rami, I will tell you, with, you know, working with these different athletes, it's all the same stuff. You know what I mean? Once again, it's just a way of describing it and how to get your point across to get the athlete to do what it is that you see they need to do in order to become more successful. Now, it's obviously a lot more prestigious and a lot more profitable when you have Alex Rodriguez paying you $10,000 a month to be at your facility to train, and you're getting the opportunity to piggyback off of his fame and notoriety. You know, same with Barry. So those things are obviously feathers in the cap that I am extremely proud of. But I got to tell you, when I'm working and training with those guys, I'm pretty much doing the exact same thing that I'm doing with that 6-year-old. It's a lot of the same stuff. Those you know, superstar athletes are obviously able to make the adjustments a lot quicker in most cases, but sometimes, in some cases, they're not. Be honest or not, I'd be honest. Sometimes they're not. It takes a while for them to switch gears too, as well. But you know, it's the same stuff with all of them. I mean,
Wow.
there's only so many different ways to hit a baseball, Romy. So only so many different ways to throw one and field one, right? So it's not like we're recreating anything here. It's the same way it's been done for years, and it's just a matter of getting the student to understand it and to be able to apply it and do it more consistently.
Wow, that's very cool. What about your, through the years, have you had any aha moments where you've said, "Wow, man, this, something happened, good or bad, and it really led to a learning experience on your part, where you can maybe say, you know what, that was during that period of time, or this event, or this moment, really made a difference in how I approach it," or do you have anything that you'd share about that?
Yeah, I mean, I do. And this is it was a very difficult situation for me. I at one point I had 3 different training academies. I had one here in Marin, which is the one that I still have. I had another down in Fresno, which is about 3 hours south of where I am, and I had another one up in Petaluma, which is about 35 minutes north of where I am. So I had multiple locations. I had a ton of different employees. I had um, you know, travel teams in all different locations, and I had a really a large organization, where we were doing huge volume, and the numbers were quite sizable. Um, I now have just the one training facility here in Marin, and I no longer have a lot of employees. And I will tell you, the one thing that has really deterred me from being big is that no one's ever going to treat it the way you treat it, and unfortunately in this business, it's very difficult to make a 6-figure salary if you're an employee. you know Guys that are coaching, even at the collegiate level, if you look at the majority of assistant coaches at colleges and things of that nature, they're working for camp money. You know what I mean? They're not making a lot of money. High school coaches are not paid a lot of money to do what it is they do. So in the private sector, it's a lot more profitable than that. But at the same time, it's difficult to create income opportunities when most of your kids don't arrive to your location until after 3 p.m. once they're out of school. And, the majority are younger kids where parents want them home by 8:30, 9 o'clock. So your hours of operation are extremely limited. And, it makes it difficult to create high earning, paying opportunities for employees. And as a result of that, you tend to have some coaches who are not as committed as you, and it tends to affect the quality of your product, and then your reputation suffers because of that. So for me, now that I've downsized, I pretty much coach all of my travel teams. I am limited to a certain amount that I can coach, obviously. So it really has reduced the level of of athletes that I have to deal with and parents that I have to, manage. But the quality has ballooned, has exploded with a much higher level of quality baseball and athletes that are in my program. And we've become a lot more successful as an overall organization. So, I would say that was the one thing that I had to learn by going through it, where I went, from a very large, well-known organization down to pretty much a one-man show, which is another reason why this FungoMan has been just absolutely amazing, because it really gives me the ability to really act as 2 people. You know what I mean? And it's the wear and tear that it saves on the body from being able to use it to do all of the different things that it does has really made a huge difference for me. So, but that would be the main thing. I would really have to say was an eye-opening experience for me. It was just the whole employee thing and the different locations, and just having so much to manage and control, and not really being able to be there at all times myself and do it the way I would do it.
That's good. That's interesting. Your quality is it keeps coming up. That's a big deal to you.
Yes, it
Um,
is.
tell me from your vantage point, I'm going to ask you a couple of different questions, but the first one is about players. What do you wish players understood more? And if you could just, put it into them immediately and just with a, one word or whatever, what would you do? What would be that one thing?
I think it would have to be put into maybe 2 or 3 different words. I would say, competitive spirit, desire to win, um, pride in what you do and how you present yourself, and the quality of product that you put out. I think so many kids nowadays have been programmed to think that it's acceptable just to participate and that the results really don't matter. And for a guy like myself who's played at a very high level and had to compete in everything that I did to get to where I am, I just think that's the wrong message to be sending these kids. Now, I know that in sports, sometimes you get athletes or coaches rather, who don't really have that level of high playing experience themselves and don't really understand how difficult it is to be successful as a player, how difficult and tough this game is, And so I think that level of understanding and compassion has to be there, and it tends to be a little bit more available through coaches who have actually failed themselves. At the end of the day, Romy, they told me to take my ball and glove and go home too. You know what I mean?
Right.
They told me they don't want me anymore. Barry, who's a close friend of mine, Barry Bonds, who trains at my facility as well, he's one of the greatest players of all time. And they told him to take his ball and glove and go home too. So, at some point or time, we're all going to be told to take our glove and ball and go home, and that we've got someone that's better coming in to replace you. And so I think that these kids need to be aware that this is extremely competitive environment, and that you have to be mentally prepared for that competitive environment that you are trying to survive in. And I see so much of the lack of competitive spirit with kids nowadays that they just don't really seem to care a lot if they win or lose. And so that's one thing with my program that we really emphasize, and we're very honest with the parents prior to joining and signing in for a program. I let them know that this is not a recreational program. I mean, you're not going to have a coach who's going to be walking up and down the field screaming and yelling at your kid. I mean, I'm not that type of person either, but you do have a guy here who's going to expect these kids to show up on time, to be prepared when they do show up, to, give it their best, to jog on and off the field, to wear their uniforms the proper way, to have their hats on straight, to, just basic respectful things that we would want all of our personal and own children to represent when they're outside of the house, So
Wow.
I really do try and hone in on a lot of those things and make sure that, parents and kids are aware that this is something that's important and that it needs to be adhered to and that you need to pay attention to.
That's great. No, I love that. And just as a side note, you really have done a great job with your own kids. They were very, very successful in their own right, and I think you and your wife have done a great job with them. I know
Thank you.
your son played football, right, at UCLA. Is that correct?
Yeah. On one note there too, this is something, a lot of the parents that come to me, their kids are obviously, these parents are a lot younger than me. I'm 56 years old. And like I said, I have a 27, 25, and a 20-year-old. So, I have a lot of parents that are coming to me and their kids are 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, And so what I try and help them and teach the parents is that, I'm a parent first too. I love my child just as much as you love your child. But I've also have standards for my children, and I make sure that my children adhere to those standards, and we have high expectations, and we support those expectations with, whatever tools they may need, a lot of support and a lot of love. But, at the same time, they know that, that they have to go out and they have to earn this. And so my son, he was drafted out of high school by the Texas Rangers in baseball, and was a 2-sport guy coming out of high school, played both baseball and football, was a very good football player, and went to UCLA on a well, it was basically a football scholarship, but he did play baseball there his first 2 seasons prior to an injury that prohibited him from continuing. But yeah, he played both baseball and football at UCLA and was on a football scholarship there. My middle daughter, Dominique, was a track athlete here in Marin County. She ran the 100-meter hurdles and was recruited to some D1 schools to do that. She chose not to participate as an athlete in college and just wanted to focus on her degree. She graduated from San Diego State with a degree in kinesiology. And then my last child also played multiple sports and is now in her junior year at University of Oregon. So when I talk to parents, I let them know that, academics are extremely important and that I have children too, and I love them as well. But look at how my kids have gone out and succeeded and have done very well, both, socially, but also academically and athletically. And, they've all turned out to be great kids, and knock on wood, we hope that remains to be the case. But yeah, I really do use my own family and my children as an example when I'm talking to other parents, because I'm a little bit further along in the parenting division than they are.
Yeah. The other question I had was, so you have kids and you have parents, but you also have other coaches that you coach against, you've coached with. What's your wish for them? What would you wish they did or had or knew, if you could just give one thing to them?
Yeah, I think that parents need to, or rather coaches need to understand their role in this whole developmental thing, right? And it's much bigger than just sports. It's much bigger than just baseball and softball. A lot of these kids look up to us in a lot of different ways, especially, with my background and reputation in this area. A lot of the kids, and my stature, being 6'5", 235 pounds, and being black on top of it, there's an intimidation factor that comes along with that when these kids walk into my facility and, start to train with me. So understanding my role with regard to being a good citizen and being a good role, a model and example for these kids, and being able to talk to them in a way that eases their concerns and their fears and make them feel comfortable and want to stay and want to continue, is something that I think we as coaches really need to be aware of and really, take pride in. And because, that's what we're there for. We're there to help these kids become better people, not just athletes, And so I think that's another part of my longevity here, is that, I have a really good reputation for being a good mentor, not just a baseball coach. I know the X's and O's of baseball. That's something that I've learned over the years, and having competed and trained and coached and scouted at the levels that I have. So I know baseball better than most. But, once again, the parenting part and the mentoring part and the, developmental part of teaching kids to be confident and successful and sure of themselves is another part of it as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, you've had a lot of reps. You got a lot of reps underneath your belt now, Charles, and it's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm hearing your why come out, but can you articulate, after all these years, 22 years doing this, lots of kids, lots of, it's not all, coaching is not all wonderful, right? It doesn't always work out for them, and there's disappointment, et cetera. But what would you say, or how has your why in this thing changed, or has it?
Romy, I think I've become a better instructor. I've become a better mentor. I've become a better communicator with regard to the things that I do with my business. That happens over time. You learn through trial and error, like you say. When you've been in business as long as I have, obviously there's been some failure and some things that didn't work out, and some things that needed to be changed on my end. And so, being confident and aware enough to know that, hey, it's not always the customer's fault, and that, they are paying you, and that, it is your job to satisfy them, I think is a really important part of it. But I also think holding your ground and standing up for what you believe, and if you, are doing it just for the dollar bill and not doing it because of the ethical, right reasons to do it, that, you can fall victim to letting people tell you how to do certain things, and, favoritism and things of that nature. So many of the different programs that come to me, or children and parents that come to me, always talk about the political side of this league or that league, high school or little league or whatever it is. And so I really try not to make any of my stuff political. It's always based on the kid and the individual. And it doesn't matter if you're this skill set, or if you're that skill set, or if you have this much money or you have that much money. It's about the individual and doing the best I can to help the individual. And that's all I really care about. And I've stayed true to that. And because I've been able to do that, I've stayed in business.
Yeah, there's no doubt that you've demonstrated that through a long period of time, and that is why you're successful, in my opinion.
Yeah.
We have a few minutes left. We're all about books. We have a book report every month. One of our people in our team here at FungoMan, we pick out a book and we do a report on it. And the reason we do that is so that we can help others see the value of what we learned. And sharing that, I think, is really important. So I always, I'm a big audiobook listener, and I love to always hear successful people like yourselves. You're gaining information. Where are you getting it? Are you getting it on podcasts? You getting it on books? Tell me your secret and give me some.
Wow, well, that's a really good question, Romy, and I'm so glad to hear you say that, because I don't think a lot of people read a lot nowadays. And I don't mean that in the sense of I consider books on tape or podcasts and all those types of things as learning opportunities. But I really do take pride in making sure that I read. And I usually I try and read, anywhere from 5 to 6 books, 5 to 10 books a year. And the books that I read are not necessarily books that are easy read books. They are thought-provoking books that force you to either, think differently about who you are and how you behave and how you interact with other people, or they're books that help you to understand business and how to stay successful and how to be creative and how to, keep your business moving in the right direction and be profitable. And they are books that, that really test your mind and your ability to focus and deliver when it's necessary. So I'm a big reader. I used to read way more when I was first starting this whole thing out, before I got so caught up into Zoom conferences and all these other things. But but yeah, I think reading books is a really, really great way to learn about a lot of different subjects that are of interest. And I don't really read books for pleasure. I read books to get better. Those are the books that I really emphasize. I have a Kindle. It's actually right here. And I read all the time. And if you were able to, I'll show you real quickly here. I'm in my office, but I don't know. You won't be able to see it, but my office is pretty much littered with books along the walls here. So yeah, these are books that I read and books that I'm proud that I've read, and they've really helped me.
So you got a recommendation before we sign off? What would be your number one recommendation to read? By the way, before you give me that, the one thing I just heard you say is that you don't always read things that you might necessarily agree with, and
right.
You allow yourself to be challenged in your thinking.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, it's seeing things in a multitude of different ways. You know what I mean? And being able to have that as part of the experience is something that I think gives you a more oval view of the entire situation. So yeah, seeing things in other people's way, in other people's view is something that I think can help you understand your view a little bit more accurately. So yeah, I read a lot of books that teach me about things that I don't know and challenge me about things that I perceive to know or perceive to understand a certain way. And yeah, it's been huge.
Well, you've been a great treat. It has been a treat to just hear you. You're obviously you sound well read. You have such a articulate way about yourself, and your communication skills are awesome. I really appreciate you spending time. You got us a recommendation for a book before we get ready to leave?
Yeah, let me pull here 1 minute. Let me pick this book up here. Are we doing time? All right. A lot of our listeners may have heard of a book called The Power of Now, written by a guy named Eckhart Tolle. He also wrote a book that's called A New Earth, and it's entitled Awakening to Your Life's Purpose. And when I read this book, it was extremely fascinating to me because it just opened up a whole nother way of seeing the world and how people that don't get so frustrated and stressed out with all the things that we have to deal with on a daily basis react to some of these things. And it was really, really empowering because it really emphasizes about it. It talks so much about the ego and how the ego is such a strong part of each of our how we're made up, and that we're, especially as athletes, how our ego plays such a major role in how we interpret things and how we react. And so learning more about the ego and how it affects me, and seeing now how it affects me because I now have the awareness of what's happening as it's happening, has been phenomenal. Not only from a being able to change something type reaction, but also maybe I don't want to change it. You know what I mean? There's sometimes when I'm okay with being who I am, and whether the other person likes it or they don't like it, I'm okay with that. You know what I mean? Because I'm aware of how I'm acting and what I'm saying and how it's probably going to be perceived, and I'm okay with that. Other times, yeah, I want to be completely aware of what I've said or done that may have, set someone off or maybe given a negative opinion or view of something or this or that, and I want to be able to change that. So it was really gave me a lot more awareness of my behavioral patterns and how I think, and I think that is a great thing to have in your repertoire. So it's called A New Earth, and it's by Eckhart Tolle, and he is the author of The Power of Now, which is another book that I read many years ago, which is also a fascinating read too, because it really emphasizes about being in the now and how we think in the present, and instead of living in the past or living in the future, how are we living right now in the present moment, in the actual time that we're actually talking right now, and how when we're eating something, are we tasting it, and we're drinking something, or when we walk outside, do we feel the sun on our back, or are we really seeing the blue sky, or it's about really staying in the immediate focus of what it is we do now, which is something that you can really help to emphasize with your athletes too when you're talking about competing at high levels and being aware of a lot of different things. So these are some of the books that I've read that helped me become a better coach, better mentor, and a better overall person.
Fantastic. That was perfect. Charles, thank you so much. You really are a great coach. We appreciate your time. Thanks for being transparent and sharing some of these things with us. This has been a great moments of time, and I think just being able to hear your perspective, your view, just it has influenced me, I know, in a positive way, and I know you're doing that on a daily basis. So the best to you always, and thank you again for being on our show, and thank you all for listening in today. We'll have another episode very soon, but Charles Scott, best of luck to you and your family. God bless, and thank you all for listening today. Take care.
Thank you too, Romy. God bless you as well. All right. Tell Christina I said hello.
Will do. Bye-bye.
All right. See you, buddy.